Life Issues on UCB One.
Now, we often get our wants and our needs mixed up. But I think we can agree we all need three things to survive: food, water, and sleep. Ah, yes, sleep. Are you someone who can't wait to slide in between the sheets, maybe with a good book to help you head into slumberland? Or do you put off the inevitable and dread the prospect of bedtime, whether your mind and body will allow you to switch off? Why do we need sleep anyway? Well, that is what we are exploring in this week's Life Issues. My name is Helen Lee, and my guest to explore is Dr Lindsay Browning, a chartered psychologist, neuroscientist and author who holds a doctorate in insomnia from the University of Oxford. Welcome along to the Life Issues podcast, Lindsay.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. It's something that we all do and all need, but what exactly is sleep? What's happening to our body when we're resting in that state?
Sure. So, for many years, especially I graduated in 2006, having studied sleep. And even at that time, it was kind of commonly thought that sleep was a bit of a waste of time. It was a time that when we couldn't be working, we weren't being efficient. And, CEOs, people would boast about how little sleep they needed. And in the idea that, the sleep's for the weak, or, we'll sleep when we're dead. But actually, sleep is not a waste of time. Our body and our brain go through a whole host of incredibly important restorative processes that we absolutely need every single day. And, when we are asleep, our brain doesn't switch off. It is alive with all sorts of different parts of sleep. And our mental health is restored, and our physical health. And there's so much evidence to show that if we get enough good quality sleep, that we will have a huge number of health benefits. So yeah, sleep is really, really important.
And we're going to go into some of those areas you've mentioned there when it comes to the benefits. But tell us a bit more about what is happening when we sleep. There are different cycles of sleep.
Yeah, so when we fall asleep, our brain goes through three main different parts of sleep. We can obviously break it up into loads of tiny subsections, but as a generally understanding it, sleep is made up of light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. It's kind of when we mostly dream. So light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. And we fall asleep and we go through these different parts of sleep in things called sleep cycles. And what that means is approximately every hour and a half, we'll go through light sleep, down into deep sleep, back through light sleep, and then into REM sleep. And then the next sleep cycle will start again for another hour and a half kind of thing. What's really important is that these cycles repeat across the night. I don't want you to start cutting up your night's sleep based in 90-minute intervals, because it's not that precise, but that's sort of, a general rule. But as you can understand, that as we progress through the night, we cyclically go through these different parts of sleep as our brain has different jobs and our body is doing different things in the different parts of sleep that are all important. And these sleep cycles repeat across the night until we wake up in the morning and we've had enough good quality sleep of all the different parts of sleep that we need. And deep sleep, if I can sort of talk about that specifically, is I get questioned all the time about it. People phone me up, Dr. Browning, can you help me? Because my sleep tracker tells me I get 20% of the night in deep sleep and I need the whole night in the good quality deep sleep. To which I say, no, you really don't. That's not how sleep works. For a really good sleeper, we will spend about 22% of the night in deep sleep. That is perfection. And thinking that deep sleep equals good sleep and that light sleep, for example, is bad sleep is really unhelpful. So an analogy I love to use is that of a plate of food. So if you have a plate of food, a balanced, nutritious meal, it contains vegetables and carbohydrate and protein, maybe some calcium. You all have all the different food groups. Now, deep sleep is like broccoli. Yes, it's really good for you. But if your entire meal was broccoli, that wouldn't be good at all. That would be very unhealthy. So we need deep sleep, we need light sleep, and we need REM sleep. They are all just as important. And trying to obsess over trying to get more of one kind of sleep or less of another is really unhelpful, because your body, unless something's wrong, your body will be sorting it out and giving you the right parts of the different kinds of sleep that you need all by itself without you having to worry about it.
Absolutely fascinating. You mentioned the importance of getting good quality sleep. And a huge question that I know is asked around the world is, what is the ideal amount of time that we need to sleep? Is there a magic bullet answer? Is there a one size fits all?
Yeah, that's a great question. And people have probably heard of 8 hours, 8 hours being thrown around as the magic number. But that's like saying that everyone should be 5'8", or that everyone should eat an exact number of calories. And that's ridiculous. People have individual sleep needs. Now, the scientific guidelines are that a working age adult, so someone between 18 and 64, should be getting somewhere between 7 to 9 hours sleep regularly, so every single day. That doesn't mean 8 is the right number because that's in the middle, because we're not all, exactly the same height. We're not all the same people. So getting a good quality night's sleep is about falling asleep in a relatively reasonable amount of time. That doesn't mean within seconds. I mean, if you fall asleep within seconds, either you're an exceptional sleeper or someone who's sleep deprived. So falling asleep within like 10, 15, 20 minutes is great. Sleeping through the night and waking, maybe once or twice, just fairly briefly, and going back to sleep again relatively quickly. So again, within 10, 15, 20 minutes, going back to sleep again, and then waking up in the morning feeling refreshed. And if that amount of sleep that you had was 7 or it was 9, that's probably the right amount of sleep for you. If you, for example, you go to sleep and you get 8 hours sleep and you wake up and you still feel really tired, maybe you're one of those people who actually needs 9 hours. And just getting 8 hours because you think that's the right number, it might not actually be enough for you, especially if you're particularly physically active, maybe if you're younger. And if you're learning a lot of new things. So in those situations, the younger we are, the more we're learning and the more physically active, generally speaking, the more sleep we will need. And the older we get, we tend to become less physically active and we start to maybe need less sleep. So when you're 60, it's highly unlikely that you'll need the same amount of sleep that you did when you were 18, for example.
It makes sense. And there's an element of trusting yourself, trusting your body.
Yeah.
Which I know is something I want to pick up on in a moment. You mentioned something there that I do want to learn a bit more about, and that is when we wake up in the night. Now, I'm a very light sleeper. If you walk into my room, I wake up. The dawn chorus wakes me up, as does some very pesky crows at the moment. Or I need the toilet, and I can be regularly waking up through the night. Mm-hmm. Is that detrimental to a good quality sleep?
That's a great question. So one of the most important things, if you're listening to this, I really want you to pay attention to this, is that those sleep cycles that we have, they're sort of every hour and a half-ish, we'll go through the light sleep, deep sleep, back through light sleep to REM sleep. Between each sleep cycle, so approximately every hour and a half, we'll wake up. Every single person on the planet will wake up about every hour and a half. They always have done and they always will. But what's really important is that when you're 18, those awakenings often will be so short that you won't realize you're having them. Maybe you'll just wake up enough to adjust the covers, roll over, go back to sleep again. And the next morning, you'll wake up after however much sleep and think, oh, wow, what a great night's sleep I had. I slept solidly without waking. What a great night's sleep. And then what happens is we get a little bit older, or we have children, or we start to have health issues, or something's stressing us. And those awakenings that we've always had start to become a little bit longer. And they become a little bit longer so that we realize we're having them. And rather than waking up for 30 seconds to a minute, we'll wake up for 2+ minutes. And then we'll realize we're awake. And rather than thinking, oh, I woke up, we'll probably think, oh, no, I've woken up. My sleep is now wrecked. It's bad quality, fragmented sleep. And I need to sleep in one solid block like I used to when I was 18. But the point is, you don't. There's no such thing as a solid night's sleep, like literally. And sleep is made up of these different sleep cycles, different parts of sleep. Now, as long as you're waking up and you get back to sleep again relatively quickly, it's really not a problem. And, 1 or 2 awakenings in the night is really normal. If you're waking up a lot more than that, or if you're awake, when you wake up, you really struggle to get back to sleep again, that's more of a problem. And that's where we want to be looking at techniques for helping you get back to sleep quicker, or looking at why you're waking up much more frequently. But when people wake up, especially when we get a bit older and we wake up in the night and people say to me, oh, it's needing the toilet that wakes me up. And what they'll do is they will radically restrict what they drink in the evening. So they'll stop drinking any liquids after 6 o'clock, because they'll think, well, if I don't drink any liquids, I won't need the toilet in the night and I won't wake up. But of course, you will wake up, because everyone wakes up. You'll just wake up thirsty instead of needing the toilet. So it's often not needing the toilet that wakes you up. It's just the fact that you're awake enough to realize your bodily sensations that you need the toilet. Like, how often, you don't all have to write into me listening to this, but how often do you go to the toilet during the day? It's probably every 2 to 3 hours, for example. If you've been asleep for 2 to 3 hours, then it's likely that your bladder is simply a little bit full. And if you're awake enough to really realize you're awake, you're just going to be aware of that, as you would be aware of a pain or a tickle in your throat. Does that make sense?
I tell you, I was really looking forward to this conversation. This is why you're helping me, and I'm sure those listening, to take the pressure off a little bit, something that we can focus so much on. I am that person that has restricted myself of liquid before bed because I think I don't want to wake up, but that makes so much sense. We go to the toilet throughout the day. We sleep for a significant amount of the day. If we're thinking of 24 hours in a day, of course we're going to need the toilet, and that's okay. It's like, stop worrying about it, which is, again, something that I'm going to pick up on a little later around how our worries can affect our quality of sleep. But I want to go back a little to what we touched on at the beginning around why we need to sleep. And you helped us understand that broadly, it's something that has been researched a lot more in recent years. I remember those days when it was kind of people boasted about going to bed at 4 a.m. and getting up at 7 but now there's definitely been a change in the conversation with a lot more research done. So help us then, Dr. Browning, understand why we need to sleep. And let's start with the physical.
Yeah. So when we sleep is, first of all, it's when our body regulates our hormones. So if we don't get enough sleep, we're not going to regulate and produce the right amount of the different hormones that we need. So, for example, ghrelin and leptin are hormones associated with hunger. And people who don't get enough sleep tend to eat more calories than people who sleep well. And therefore, if you're trying to lose weight, but you're not sleeping, then what's going to happen is that your hunger hormones and the hormones that regulate your ability to process insulin, to make you feel hungry or feel satiated, feel full, go all over the place. And basically you'll end up eating more food, probably choosing, science suggests that you'll choose less healthy foods, you'll choose more fatty, salty, sugary foods than if someone gets sufficient sleep. As well, when we sleep, we boost our immune system. So there's a lot of studies to show that if you don't get sufficient sleep, that you're more likely to get the flu the next day. If you're exposed to it, they've done experiments, they've sleep-deprived people, had people who slept well, exposed them both to the flu virus. Those who didn't get sufficient sleep were far more likely to come down with the flu. And also, the other side, if you have a vaccination, which of course the entire world is, COVID and all, we all know everything about vaccinations now. If you have a vaccination and you get sufficient sleep the night that just after you've had it, that vaccination, your body will deal with it, and you'll have a much bigger boosted immune system response to that vaccine than if you have the vaccine but then have a sleep deprived night. Another really fascinating direct link of sleep and health is dementia, because people who don't get sufficient sleep have a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And I find this one especially fascinating because there are some studies shown, and there was a neuroimaging study, which means they look at the brain in real time, and they looked at someone's sleeping brain and found that when you're asleep, so we have cerebrospinal fluid, which basically means we've got some liquid in our spine, and during the night, our brain, the pathways open up to allow this spinal fluid to physically wash over our brain, and it literally spring cleans your brain. So it's like with a mop and a bucket. So you have this cerebrospinal fluid that washes over your brain while you're asleep. And while it's doing that, it is washing away amyloid plaques. Now, amyloid plaques are like sticky substances that build up in the brain, and they sort of clog up the brain, and they're associated with Alzheimer's. So if you don't get enough sleep, your brain doesn't have enough time to do the spring cleaning, basically, and you're more likely to get a buildup of these amyloid plaques. And that's why there is a significant link between people who are consistently sleep deprived and those who then, go on to develop Alzheimer's. But when we talk about anxiety and worry, maybe we should talk about it here briefly. All the health benefits of sleep, which are true, they really are. I could talk to you in loads more detail about loads more examples. How unhelpful is this conversation if you're listening to this right now and you're struggling with your sleep? Basically, you're already struggling to sleep and you're listening to somebody saying, well, you're probably going to get dementia and diabetes and heart attack and all these terrible things. So although, yes, my job, literally my entire job is to help people get better sleep, it's also important to remember that we are capable of coping with poor sleep sometimes. And we're talking about this science and the link of sleep and wellness. It's really, we've got to think of it in a longer term sense, as in, we're talking about people who are deliberately choosing to not get enough sleep for weeks, months, years at a time. We're not talking about a new parent who has a few weeks of not being able to sleep well because of their child, or someone who is really, really stressed because of a financial problem or a job problem and they're struggling to sleep. It's really, I want people to understand that if you're choosing to not value your sleep and you're choosing to not prioritize your sleep, that's a fallacy, especially if you're doing it at the expense of something else. If you're spending all your time down the gym and eating organic, amazing food, but completely neglecting your sleep, that's really unhelpful. It's not, I really don't want people to go away and be like super scared about this, because if it was, to be fair, every new parent on the planet would have cancer and dementia and diabetes and heart disease, because every new parent on the planet will have probably a year or two per child of pretty rocky sleep.
Yeah. It ties into what you were sharing earlier about sleep and the different cycles being like a balanced meal. I understand that quality sleep in terms of building that healthy life comes alongside, is incorporated into the, like you say, the healthy diet, the healthy activities that we take part in, as well as our thoughts and what we're thinking about. So you've helped us understand some of the really important physical benefits, physical needs of sleep.
Yeah.
Help us to understand then what happens when we don't get enough sleep. And I caveat that with, as you've just laid out, this isn't to put fear into us. Yeah. This is just to raise awareness, because when we have awareness, then we can act or pay attention to things in our lives. So this is about really helping people understand the importance of sleep rather than exacerbating fear and anxiety.
Definitely. So if we have a bad night, like we all will, anyone, I'm a really good sleeper. I've always been generally quite a good sleeper. Doesn't mean I'm a perfect sleeper. That's a difference. So if I have something very, very stressful the next day, of course I won't sleep well. The night before I was on like Channel 4 on live TV, I didn't sleep well at all that night. And literally, this is my job. Of all the people in the world, like I really should be one of the top people who could like force a great night's sleep. But the reality is you can't. But of course, if you don't get a great night's sleep because you're stressed or anxious, the next day, yes, you're going to have some impairments. Your reaction times will be a bit compromised. There are studies to show that if you deliberately, for example, pull an all-nighter the night before your exam, you're going into that exam as if you've had 1 or 2 alcoholic drinks. That's your level of sort of the impairment you have. And of course, if you want to do well on an exam, you're not going to take, a double shot of whiskey right before you sit the exam, are you? And yet, if you're deliberately choosing to work through the night because you think you want to maximize that studying, actually, again, you're probably doing more harm to your chances. But that's different to just having not a great night because you're tossing and turning because you're a bit anxious. But yeah, the reality is the next day after a poor night's sleep, we're going to have reaction times will be compromised. Our skin, we might not look quite as great. We're more likely to catch a cold that day. But it's only one day. And especially with the exam example, I have people all the time who are so worried about the night before an exam sleeping well because they want to do well in their exam. And, the example I'll give them is, let's say you were, about to sit an exam tomorrow. And like I said, I'm a really good sleeper. So the night before the exam, you don't get a great night's sleep. I get a great night's sleep because I'm a really good sleeper. And then we both sit the exam the next day. I'm not going to pass that exam because it doesn't matter how much sleep I got, I haven't revised. I don't know anything about your subject. So we can get really fixated on sleep being the most important thing of all, but actually it's one part of it. And yes, if you have a great night's sleep, you're going to be even better. But if you have a terrible night's sleep, you'll be a little bit impaired. But the reality is your success in that exam isn't based solely on sleep. It's based on, are you coming down with a cold? Did you have an argument with your mum the morning of the exam? Did you get stuck in traffic? And was that really stressful? How much revision have you done? All those other things are also part of it. And yet people get so obsessed with the sleep. And the more stressed you get about trying to force yourself to have a good night's sleep, then the opposite will start to happen because you're just so stressed about that.
Well, let's talk a bit then about why some of us experience poor quality sleep. I know you hold a doctorate in insomnia, which is, well, tell us what is insomnia, actually. Let's start there. Sure.
So insomnia means a significant difficulty with sleep. It doesn't mean people getting no sleep, because sometimes that's a misnomer. People think, well, it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep, but I don't have insomnia. Yes, you do. So insomnia means taking regularly, basically taking 30 minutes or more than 30 minutes to fall asleep, waking up in the middle of the night for more than 30 minutes, and waking up in the morning feeling unrefreshed, despite the fact that you should have had enough time. It's not insomnia if you give yourself 4 hours in bed to sleep and you wake up feeling unrefreshed. That's a lifestyle choice. But yeah, insomnia basically means that you really want to get enough sleep, but for some reason your brain won't let you, and you can't fall asleep, or you keep waking up throughout the night, or you wake up much too early, that kind of thing. So and that's what I help people with.
What can cause insomnia?
So lots of things. The main trigger, though the most common, is a normal life stress. So like the exam example, or you're going through a bereavement, or you're having a really hard time at work. In all these situations, anyone, even a really great sleeper like me, would struggle to sleep. But once you get beyond that exam, maybe you've done the exam or the bereavement, obviously you're still really sad about it, but you're now coming to terms with it. Or the job stress, maybe your horrible boss has left, or you've changed jobs and now you're really happy. So the trigger, the cause of the sleeping problem has now gone, but you're still not sleeping well. And that's because you maybe have started to worry about your sleep. You're not worried about your job anymore, but you're like, oh my goodness, I really hope I sleep well tonight, because I've been sleeping so badly for days. And if I don't sleep well tonight, then I won't be good enough at work tomorrow. And I was just listening to this podcast, and if I don't get good sleep, I'm going to get dementia and cancer and diabetes. And then before you know it, you're so stressed out about sleep that now you can't sleep because you're so stressed about sleep. And that's the crux of insomnia, basically. So yeah, we all have to understand and appreciate that no one can force a great night's sleep, and having the odd poor night is part and parcel of life. And yeah, it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. It's okay. You have to accept that and ride it through. Once it becomes a pattern and it's ongoing, that's when we need to start making some changes. And the simple changes at the start would be a good sleep hygiene that I'm sure we can talk about. And then if it's significantly still a problem and your sleeping difficulty has been going on for much longer and you've tried to fix it, but you can't, or you're very anxious about it and it's affecting your life, that's when some more sort of serious intervention, like CBTI, some sort of proper sleep therapy, would be a good idea.
You are listening to the Life Issues podcast here from UCB. My guest this week is Dr Lindsay Browning, a chartered psychologist, neuroscientist, author of the book Navigating Sleeplessness, and also founder of troublesleeping.co.uk. We love exploring here on UCB what faith looks like in everyday life and how God is part of every aspect of life: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. So you're someone who would call themselves a Christian, a follower of Jesus. What does the Bible teach us about sleep and the importance of this quality rest that we've been talking about?
Sure. Yeah, and absolutely. I'm a Christian, and although in my day-to-day life of treating people with sleeping disorders, I don't involve the Bible because, that's not what you do. But if someone wanted to talk to me about it, absolutely. And with regarding sleep, there's a lot about sleep really that we can pull from the Bible. So for example, just as Jesus took time to rest, so can we. We don't need to think about sleep as us being lazy. Jesus modeled that we are allowed to take time to stop. And also, sleep is a biological process when our brain repairs itself. So again, it's important that we understand that sleep is something that we need. It's not just a luxury. And yet, even as Jesus says, we are able to stop and rest. And actually, quite a lot of time, people can struggle with their sleep because they're not taking time to rest during the day. And by rest, I don't just mean sleep. I mean taking time to stop, to meditate, to just think, maybe to read the Bible, to read a book, to go for a walk in nature. Our lives can be so busy, especially nowadays, that we are going 100 miles an hour nonstop throughout the day, and then we get into bed and expect our brains just to flip and go to sleep. But we need time to rest as well as to sleep, if that makes sense. So some things about, making time, finding time during the day to rest is really important, and to know that it's not us being lazy. Taking time just to stop, just to have a moment that isn't filled with screens, jobs, chores, watching the next episode of whatever on Netflix. It's really important that we take some time and space, and whether that be a spiritual moment or not, for everyone, it's really, really important, because then when we go to sleep, our brain can actually do its job and go through all those biological processes, rather than our brain thinking, oh, well, we really shouldn't go to sleep yet. We should really have some time to think about all these big topics that are on our mind. And that's where people can lie down in bed and their brain's going a million miles an hour. And then lastly, going back to the sort of the Christian point of view, so a lot of difficulty with sleep stems from us trying to control our bodies. And the more we try to force sleep, the harder it is. And that's why, partly, when we're anxious or stressed and we think, oh no, I really, really have to go to sleep soon because tomorrow is such an important day, we're trying to sleep. We're trying to force sleep to happen. But we can't. Sleep is something that happens to us almost. We can't voluntarily make sleep happen. For example, if someone put a gun to my head and said, right, Lindsay, you have to sleep right now or I'm going to shoot you. Of course I'm not going to sleep, even if my life literally depended on it. So we try to control sleep, but that makes it go wrong. So going back to the Bible and God, part of my approach to sleep is about we have to let go. There are some things that we can't control. And of course, as part of being a Christian is letting things go to God and giving those things up, understanding that we aren't in control of every single detail of everything. So if you're lying in bed and you're trying to force sleep and you're trying to make sleep happen, then maybe from just slanting it from a very different direction than I would normally talk about in my sessions, but I very much believe giving it up to God. I tell people to stop trying to relax, but if you're a Christian, it might be helpful to think about, okay, I'm just going to, whether I sleep or not, that's not down to me. I'm going to give that to God, and I'm just going to let go of trying to force something. And the act of letting go and calming down may well be enough just to let you feel calmer and go to sleep.
And it makes sense what you're sharing, because when you journey with Jesus, you realize that being a Christian is not a religion. It's not about trying to control things, do things and tick boxes. It's actually about submission. It's about following. It's about receiving the gift of grace. And I think what you've shared there really speaks into the heart of God. And when you read the Bible, even from the word go, God created rest as part of creation. On the seventh day, there was rest. God rested. And as you say, Jesus, he, throughout his life, took time particularly after really busy crowd moments, he would go and be alone and rest. And I think it's a different life issues podcast conversation around why we lack rest in our culture. We did do one recently on the attention economy that does speak into this. But I think what you've brought to our attention is actually the beauty of how God's created us is that sleep is part of being a human. And when we almost accept that, relax in it, stop stressing about it, that's part of enabling, unleashing the ability to sleep. So it's actually really encouraging because I have been struggling recently, Dr. Browning, with my sleep. And I think I've been doing exactly what you described, worrying too much, but also probably trying to control it or thinking that I'm not controlling it well, therefore I'm not sleeping. But my sister very kindly prayed with me a few weeks back, and she said, as we prayed, she prayed that I would release into sleep, that it wouldn't be an action, it would be something that would just happen. It's almost that lying back and falling asleep, which is why the word used around sleep is falling asleep rather than actioning sleep. We almost need to let go of the need to do it, to allow it to happen. It's almost a juxtaposition.
Yeah. And just like breathing, if we breathe without thinking about it. But yeah, if you do some kind of breathing exercise and you deliberately take control of your breathing, which we all can, and then if you stop doing that breathing exercise, your breathing stops. And you might think, well, how do I make breathing happen again? But then the split second you get distracted, breathing happens by itself. We don't have to control our breathing. And similarly, we don't have to / we can't control sleep. We just have to create an environment which is calm, conducive for sleep, and see if sleep happens. So good sleep hygiene is all about that. It's about creating an environment where sleep is more likely to happen, because clearly if you're in a room with loud music and bright strobe lighting, that is not an environment in which sleep is likely to happen. If you're in an environment which is dark and calm and there's lovely classical music playing and someone stroking your head, that's much more conducive for sleep. But equally, none of those things can make sleep happen or even make sleep not happen. Because if you're tired enough, you will fall asleep in that noisy room with the strobe lighting, because we can't make sleep happen, and we also can't make sleep not happen.
Yeah.
We literally can't.
It's those people who can fall asleep easily on aeroplanes I'm always jealous of. So help us understand more then around what you mean by sleep hygiene and how we can improve our quality of sleep, or even just sleep, manage to fall asleep, because that will be just the start of a 10 for a lot of people.
Sure. So there are, like I said, we want to create an environment that's most likely that sleep would happen in. And for many people, they are not doing that naturally because we're living life a million miles an hour, like I mentioned before. We're trying to maximize every second of our lives to be as productive as possible, in which case, when you probably heard about having a wind down time before bed. Well, that sounds like a luxury, but I'm a working mom of how many children and I've got to juggle all these things. I don't have time to sit down and read a book and light candles. I've got to get the kids' packed lunches ready for the morning. So we've got to understand that our life choices do affect our sleep. And if we are going a million miles an hour and just expect that we finish that work project, we finish that email, shut the laptop down, instantly, right, let's sleep now. Your brain is still in a busy, stressy mode from earlier, from just now. And we can't just swap to, oh, I'm so calm and relaxed. So a wind down time, as annoying as it might sound, or as waste of time, but it's not, because rest is important. And also we need to have some downtime to get us from the busy stress world to sleep. And that's why things like mindfulness, forest bathing as a concept, meaning just going for a walk in the forest and bathing in the beauty of the forest. There's a lot of stuff now that we understand that well-being, self-care is important. It's not a waste of time. It's not selfish. So good sleep hygiene involves doing good things before sleep that will help your sleep be better, one of which is a wind down time. So that means just carving half an hour to an hour of time before you go to sleep when you're going to wind down. So not doing stressful things. In that time, do something that is relaxing for you. If you like reading, do some reading. Brilliant. If you hate reading, don't. You don't have to read because because I said you should read before bed. It's about choosing what works for the individual. Maybe some yoga would be good for you. Maybe taking a bath, maybe having a massage, maybe doing a jigsaw, maybe reading the Bible, whatever it is that you find relaxing to do in that time. Things that I would avoid doing would be on being on screens, because if we're on our devices, they're designed to be addictive for a start. I mean, that's literally what they're designed to do. So you're going to be drawn into the game you're playing or the social media videos that you're watching, and you'll probably forget to go to sleep because you're so engrossed in it. And also, it's not a calming thing. We get lots of dopamine hits when we're playing games, or will the next video be good? And that's keeping us in a physiologically more aroused state. And also the light, which is such a big part of it. When you're looking at your phone or your tablet, generally speaking, you're probably holding it about a foot from your face, which means you're holding a bright light right in front of your eyes. And of course, biologically, we need to see darkness before bed for our body to think, it's nighttime, let's produce melatonin and help us go to sleep. And if you're shining what in essence is a bright torch straight at your face with your phone, you're stopping your body from doing its natural production of melatonin, and you're going to find it harder to sleep. And as well, some more good sleep hygiene stuff is about, how is your bedroom? When did you last replace your mattress? When did you last replace your pillows? Are your pillows and your mattress supportive to your sleeping style? For example, if you were single and now you're a couple, that mattress that was good for a single person may well not be suitable for two people, the weight of two people. If you're pregnant, you're going to be, weighing more. You might need different pillows to support you. If you've lost a lot of weight, you might need a different mattress. And seasonality. Is your bedroom the right temperature? You might need to change your duvet or the tog of your duvet, depending on if it's winter or summer. And perhaps if you and your partner have different temperatures that you want to sleep in, but you're sharing a double duvet, that can cause problems because, you might be too hot and you want to put it off, but they're too cold and you're having this fight. So actually, a really great tip from that point of view is to have two single duvets that you sleep with. No one's going to know. You buy the same material. No one's going to know you've got two single duvets. And then if you get too hot, you can throw it off without disrupting your partner, and you can put it back on when you get cold again. That's a really great tip. So comfort at night. Make sure you wind down before bed. And then, things that people have heard about, like caffeine. If you're having a double espresso before bed, maybe that's not so helpful for your sleep. But, to be fair, as a sleep specialist, I rarely have people coming to my clinic who drink a lot of caffeine in the evening, because that's the easy one that people start to avoid. I would suggest trying to avoid caffeine after about 2:00, because it can take a long time to get out of our system, much longer than we think. Caffeine has a 6-hour half-life approximately, meaning 6 hours after your tea, coffee, Coca-Cola, dark chocolate, half that caffeine is still in your system, stopping you from sleeping. And then and a really, really important part of sort of good sleep hygiene would be about helping to calm that busy mind. So we've mentioned about making time to rest, and that's really important. But making time to think, to stop and think earlier in the day is so important. Now, you could stop and meditate, or you could get a journal, there are all sorts of gratitude journals, those kinds of things, or get a piece of paper and a pen. That's pretty much free. And just find 15 minutes earlier in the day. So I say earlier because I don't want you to do it right before bed. If you're doing it right before bed, all this thinking is going to be too fresh in your brain and you'll still be thinking about it in bed. So at least 2 hours before bed, so maybe 7 in the evening, sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and just write. Write down whatever is on your mind, like a brain dump, like a diary, whatever it is. Write down your to-do list for tomorrow. Getting those things out of your head earlier in the day means that when you get into bed at night, your brain is going to be calmer, and you're going to be physiologically calmer because you had a wind down time. You're going to be mentally calmer because you've made time and space earlier in the day to do that thinking. And your bedroom is hopefully comfortable because you've got a decent mattress, those kinds of things. And that your room is dark and quiet. And that's sort of the essence of good sleep hygiene, really.
It's so interesting. And what's really struck me as you've been sharing, Dr. Browning, is that this isn't about restricting us or making it something that we're more disciplined in. It's almost about enjoying it more, making space to really be intentional around rest and enjoying that process. Even the journaling early on in the day, I think that's a really good idea. Takes the pressure off night. It's like, oh, if I haven't journaled, then I won't sleep. And you end up adding another layer of pressure. But just allowing space to think about what you can do realistically in your life to improve that quality of your sleep hygiene that then will lead to inevitably a better sleep. I'm aware time is against us. I want to just pick up on one point you made. And I suppose this speaks into if you are maybe battling with insomnia or you just have tried many of those things you've suggested and we just still can't sleep. Or maybe someone that can't wake up well, finding that in the morning it's just the hardest thing to do to get out of bed.
Sure. So if you feel like you've tried everything, you've tried chamomile tea, you've tried the wind down time, you've done everything you possibly could and your sleep is still really bad. You go to bed and your brain won't let you sleep. Then speak to your doctor about getting access to CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And it's the NICE guideline, world recommended gold standard treatment for sleeping problems. And it's not a pill. It's a sort of a practical talking therapy, which is entirely focused on your sleep. And it involves helping you to unpick all the anxiety you've probably got curled up with that sleep. You're so stressed about your sleep that that's causing you to not sleep, as well as changing some of the behaviors and things that you might be doing that aren't helpful. Like maybe you might be spending time, way more time in bed than you should. Maybe you're going to bed at 9 p.m. and getting up at 9 a.m. because you're trying to get enough sleep. And of course, then you're spending 12 hours in bed. And of course, you don't need 12 hours sleep. So you're going to spend a lot of time being even more stressed and frustrated and anxious. So yeah, CBTI, this is what I do, obviously, but it should be available. If you speak to your GP, you should be able to get access to it by the NHS. There might be via an app or via talking therapies or across the world, wherever you are, you should be able to get access to CBTI wherever you are. And that should be, it's really want to point out that it's available, because lots of people think that they don't want to go to their GP because all they'll give them is sleeping pills, and they don't want sleeping pills. But there is an actual proper treatment. Sleeping pills just mask the problem. They might help you to knock out and fall asleep, but they're not fixing why you're not sleeping. Whereas this treatment really helps to fix why you're not sleeping. And if you are waking up in the morning feeling unrefreshed, again, it's really important to speak to your doctor, because maybe there's something going on there. Maybe you're sleeping for 8-9 hours and still feeling tired, in which case, okay, well, why? That shouldn't be the case. Is that because you have maybe sleep apnea, which is a breathing disorder that's really, really common? People often don't even know they have, which means that you repeatedly stop breathing throughout the night, meaning you're not waking up sort of 4 or 5 times in the night between each sleep cycle. You might be waking up hundreds of times in the night. And even though you think you've slept solidly, you've actually had the worst broken sleep possible. Or other things like restless leg syndrome, periodic limb movement. There are all sorts of things that, speaking to your doctor, if you're struggling with sleep or you're feeling really tired and you don't understand it, maybe it's an iron deficiency or a thyroid problem, get those things checked out, and then you can get that fixed, which would be great.
If you would like to connect with Dr. Browning, you can find her on social media at Dr. Browning Sleep. Her book is called Navigating Sleeplessness. You can find out more about her work at the website troublesleeping.co.uk. It's been a real privilege to hear your knowledge, wisdom, and I know you've spent so much of your time really investing into how to help people sleep better. And we're just so grateful that you've spent that time with us to, I know, will encourage so many people and hopefully help us sleep even, well, for me, sleep better, full stop. So thank you so much for joining us on the Life Issues podcast.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Life Issues podcast with me, Helen Lee, and a special thank you to Rachel Gillies for helping produce this week's episode.